Me and my friends Selena and Martha, Selena's sister Jasmine, and our common friend Emma. We are 5 in a group. One night at 7:30 p.m. we all decided to have a party at my house. My parents had gone out for an important meeting and would not return until the next day. All of us had decided to have fun. Martha had brought a Ouija board along with her. I asked her, "Why have you brought this with you?" To which she replied, "We must include them in our party as well." We partied hard. And then at 12 a.m. we decided to play with the Ouija board. We placed the board on a table and loaded some candles. Selena started the session. "Is anyone there who would like to communicate with us?" Selena asked. There was no reply. Selena spoke again. "Don't hesitate to talk." Again. There was no reply. We got bored after asking 21 times and decided to watch TV instead. As the girls had to stay in my house for the night, they went to change their clothes. When it was finally Martha's turn to change, she went to the washroom. Suddenly, we heard Martha scream, and we rushed to see what had happened. Martha was crying, and she said, "I just now saw myself walking across the washroom." At first we didn't understand what she meant, and we thought that she was trying to scare us. But then she showed us a scratch mark on her arm, which was not possible for her to make. We then thought to ask the Ouija board again. This time, I decided to ask the questions. "If anybody is here, please tell us, is anybody there?" Strangely, this time, the board decided to answer back. "Yes." "Who are you?" The board pointed to the letter D. Diha. The board slowly spelled out the word death. "What do you want from us?" "Your flesh as well?" The board answered. And this was enough for us. We all left everything and ran towards the door. But the door did not open, and we realized that we had been locked in my own house. Some more supernatural things started happening. The lights were flickering, and things were being thrown here and there. We somehow managed to hide in one of the rooms, but to no avail. Martha got very angry and she asked with a loud scream, "Why don't you leave us alone?" To which the Ouija replied, "Your screams make me powerful." Selena, in frustration, burned the Ouija board with a gas cylinder. The moment the Ouija board was burned, the front door opened with a loud noise, and without wasting any time we ran out of the house. But the thing that happened after that is the most horrible part of the story. We all got out. But when Martha was about to step out the door slammed shut. For a second, everything was dead silent. But after that, we heard her screams from the inside. We banged on the door and called out her name. After some time, our neighbors came and we managed to break down the door. We found Martha lying unconscious on the floor. We took her to a hospital after that day. Martha never spoke a word again. Later, we found that the spirit whom we had called to the Ouija board was David, who was Selena's half-brother. He died due to an accident. David was never good, when he was alive or dead. Martha was admitted to an insane asylum. And even today, we don't know what exactly happened on that night. But whenever I look into her eyes, I get shivers all around my body and I feel something horrible had happened. My family and I ended up moving from that house. Looking back, I have to ask myself the question, why did we do that? Because all of our lives have changed. I still feel a bad presence around me. This happened on the Halloween night of 2008, and is not my own experience, but that of my brother, sister, and close friends. It is long, so bear with me. I lived in Canberra during my childhood, and Canberra is known to be the most haunted location in Australia given its history. Growing up, I never took the paranormal seriously. However, my sister and her 3 friends did. In fact, they were all Wiccans. On occasion, they would try and contact spirits in the closest cemetery at daytime, but would only experience things like really cold air or hearing footsteps. On Halloween 2008, they decided to go down to the cemetery at midnight. And my brother and his friend also went along. They were all around the age of 13 to 19. I was 14. For some stubborn and stupid reason, I decided to stay home. I now know that I will regret that decision for the rest of my life. This was definitely a very haunted place. And it is also worth mentioning that it is one of the oldest churches in Australia, being built in 1840. It is called St. John's the Baptist Church. Excitedly, they walked down, but not really expecting to see anything amazing. When they reached the cemetery, it was all serious business. They sat down in a circle and held hands with a candle in the center. Then my sister read something aloud from a book. When it ended, they were looking around for about 10 minutes. And one of my sister's friends was the first to see something. This thing was glowing a gray color, and it seemed to be fading in and out of focus. It was 20 meters away at the side of the churchyard. They were just watching it for a few minutes, whispering to each other. Then my sister and her 3 friends started slowly walking towards it. As they got closer, it became clearer and clearer that it was a ghost of a young girl, and 19th century clothing. They slowly recognized the details and folds in her dress, and hair as she was twirling her arms and spinning. They just stared at the figure, silently smiling in awe. They were not threatened at all. She was not aggressive in the least. They always tell me how amazing it was, and I'm still so jealous. My brother and his friends started approaching it slowly, as well by the hand gestures of the others. Next to the ghost, there was a whole big tree, and they noticed that dirt around it was being flown up in the air, and they started hearing this strange growling sort of noise, like a dying animal coming from that direction. Something started to form there. It slowly took the shape of a humanoid on all 4s and was appearing in and out of focus. The girl ghost had disappeared. For some strange reason, seemed to be digging in the ground very frantically, almost like trying to find something that was buried under the tree. They were happy the seance worked until now, as the 2 boys cautiously crept up to them before seeing what it was. The strange ghost had stopped and everything went quiet. Suddenly, it looked straight up at them and saw them as some sort of threat. With no warning, it started to crawl and slope towards them very aggressively, while making a screeching sound on this path. That disappeared and then reappeared, getting closer as it did. I would imagine tears forming in their eyes, as their version of reality was bending. Never a nice feeling. I told them that they should have stayed, see what it wanted. They replied by saying things like, "No way. This thing definitely wanted to hurt us." We all started feeling tremendous fear, and there was no way we would have stayed any longer. As they ran out, excited yet terrified, my brother was the only one to look back, and he said it was still chasing them while the other girl ghost reappeared in the same spot. Well, they did not go back for months after that. The images were still too vivid. Personally, I would have gone back to check it out the same night, along with a lot of other things. When they did call Mom to pick them up, they explained everything they saw to us when they got home. At first, I did not believe them. Then I got to look at my brother's face. It was so pale white. It was almost like there was no blood in his head at all, and they all had terrified looks on their faces. When they were telling me all this, they held back tears, yet they were really excited at the same time. I had no other choice but to believe that. Often it crosses my mind that the ghost of the young girl was luring them closer to the evil-looking ghost. But why? 1 year later, they went again, and this time I went with them. It was not half as successful though. I did after the sense walk around by myself for a few minutes. I felt very uneasy and threatened for no reason at that moment. I remember vividly seeing something white and ghostly float over my head for about 3 seconds. Walking away from that area, I stayed about 10 meters away from everybody else, looking around the graveyard for anything interesting, but saw nothing. After about 5 minutes later, I swear I saw something unfocused that caught my eye. It was wobbling and flickering like a pale green flame. It was around the same area that the ghost of the young girl was last year. It was so captivating and hypnotic. I looked at it with a smile for about 30 seconds, then walked to the others and said I think there was something over there. So we walked towards it. I thought finally I can have this experience, but sadly didn't last that long. As we approached it, it slowly seemed to be different. Surprisingly, all that was there was an old tall gravestone. Just a gravestone. We felt silly. We all stayed there for about 15 minutes, and didn't see anything. Only heard the odd noises from inside the church, like someone was moving heavy objects. When we walked home, everybody was saying things like, well, that was a dud. I felt angry and upset. To this day, I still wonder what I saw. It couldn't be just a gravestone. They don't fade in and out, glow, move, or change shape. I believe it was a ghost. Sometimes I drive down to the cemetery just to take pictures, hoping to catch something interesting. Out of the 58 if taken, there was only one picture of a ghost. I have had more experiences, but that's for another time. Prior to 2016, I lived in Palmdale, California. My sister Honey and my youngest daughter lived with my mother in a rented townhouse apartment in Oxnard, about 2 hours away. Every week or two I made the long drive to take them shopping and clean their house because they were both disabled. My mother was my heart, and my sweet sister helped raise me, so anything they needed, I was there for them. On the first floor, the kitchen was in the back with the door that opened to the backyard. Then a big open space, then the living room and the front door. On the right, the bathroom and my mother's bedroom. The stairs were on the left with the half-wall railing going up to the first landing. My mom was sitting in her lift recliner, on the right facing the base of the stairs. One night we were all sitting in the living room watching the show with the lights on, and my daughter was upstairs in her room. We were laughing at something we saw on TV, when I saw something on the stairs. It darted down the steps really fast, picking up at me, then ducked down behind the railing, followed by a cold chill that entered the living room. My mother commented that it was cold, and pulled her rope together. At first I thought it was my daughter playing tricks on me, but when she didn't pop up, I felt concerned. I said, "Mama, did you see something?" Because she had full sight of anything there. And she responds, "No, dear. I thought I did, but there's nothing there." That's when it hit me, and instinctively I knew what it was, where it came from. I ran up the stairs and burst into my daughter's room. "What did you do?" She looked at me with her eyes wide. She knew exactly what I was referring to, and started apologizing. I told her to tell me what she did to bring into this house. She proceeded to tell me that when her girlfriends were there, they thought it would be fun to summon a spirit. Then they tried to reach the father of one of her friends, who passed away about 2 years prior. But she said something else came through, and it scared them, so they stopped. And her friends went home without even saying goodbye. Well, I was furious. How can you play with something you don't understand? I told her that I knew she was just trying to help a friend. But for heaven's sake, I warned her years ago to never mess around with things she didn't understand and had no control over. I was thinking that not only do I constantly have to worry about my family's health, now I have to worry about this. I asked if she at least closed the door, and she just looked at me with a blank stare. Obviously she did not. She said they made a Ouija board out of paper, and when they were done she ripped it up and threw it away. That door had to be closed. We gathered the pieces and she called her friends. 2 of them were too scared to come back, so we had to perform the closing without them. But in the back of my head, I knew that it didn't work, and it was still there hiding. At that point there was nothing I could have done, viewing the circumstances at the time. Now fast forward to 2016. I had an opportunity waiting for me in Washington State. So I begged and pleaded for my mother and sister to go with me. But my sister Honey was fanatically scared of change. And although my mother desperately wanted to go with me, she couldn't leave my sister's side. I wish now I was more persistent. So I moved, reluctantly leaving them with my daughter and her now husband to take over their care. Within those 2 years, my eldest sister Honey's health severely declined, and my mother shared with me 8 months after I moved that she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I flew and drove back and forth to be with them, and every time I showed them pretty pictures of my new life and our beautiful green surroundings, asking them to return with me. And every time Honey would say that she was too apprehensive to leave, and said now 2018 they both passed away, my mother from cancer, and my sister from an existing illness, taking a big part of my heart and my soul with them. My daughter and her husband moved down, leaving all of my mother and sister's things there. Somebody had to put their stuff in storage, and of course it had to be me. Even though I was the youngest of 6, I felt it was my duty. I drove there with my 2 grandchildren, 8 and 4, because at the time, there was no one available to watch them for that long of a period of time. When we arrived, the place is in shambles. Dirty dishes and moldy food lined the counters and was piled up in the sink, and it looked like soot all over the floor. Mom and Honey, his personal belongings were strewn around the house, and in my mother's room a barricade of trash piled up. On the way up to her door, in the middle of the floor in the open space, was a full-length mirror that I had never seen before hanging off. It wouldn't matter, I just stood there and cried. I set up a clean spot in the living room for my grandson to play on his tablet, and my granddaughter wanted to help. As I was bagging things up in the kitchen, I noticed her just standing there staring into the mirror. I didn't think anything of it, but she kept standing there. Then I heard her say to me, well, not looking away, "Nana, can we get rid of this mirror?" I thought she wanted me to move it, but she was adamant that it'd be taken out of the house. I asked her why she looked so scared, and she told me that while she was looking in the mirror, she was standing alone. She couldn't see anything in the reflection around her, behind her, just darkness all around her, and something was coming. I looked at the mirror, not at myself, and it didn't look very dark. Say no more. Not only did I take it outside, I smashed it into little pieces and throw it in the trash can. We decided to sleep in the living room, and it took days to even come close to being done. This was the last night, and we were alone. I just mopped downstairs, so I locked the doors and all the windows in the whole house, and we slept upstairs, in the bedroom across from my daughter's old room. We hunkered down in some mattresses on the floor. I always left the light on in the hall. I'm reading a book online. My granddaughter is falling asleep next to me, and my grandson was on his tablet at the end of the bed. I was getting sleepy and my grandson started to yawn. He looked up from his tablet and his eyes got big. Then he ran to the door shouting spooky and slammed it. Running back, he quickly got under the covers and got as close to me as he could, and making me feel very uneasy. I could see movement in the home, dimming the lights around and under the door, making swirling strange shapes, as if someone were pacing, following by surges of blackness and wisps of cold air coming from the space under the door. That night was long, and I felt on guard until I finally fell asleep, but woke up hours later and had to go to the bathroom. But I was too scared. I was waiting until daybreak, but I couldn't wait any longer. I slowly opened the door, fearing for what was waiting for me. On the other side, there was nothing, but I knew there was, as I could feel it. I tried to be as fast as I could, and I left the bathroom door open so I could hear the kids. Then I ran back, hearing a swoosh behind me. I slammed the door and laid holding the kids until daybreak. I received a call from my sister later that morning. She couldn't understand how we had been able to stay in that house. When I asked her why, She told me that when she was there grabbing some boxes of pictures, she heard noises from my daughter's room upstairs. She said it was loud, and she felt an evil presence, and everything inside her told her to leave, so she did. She also told me that my son-in-law firm, which I had no knowledge of at the time, was practicing black magic and summoning dark energy in that room. Late that afternoon, everything was done. The kids were in the car, and the car was packed. I just wanted to look in my mother's bedroom one last time, where she used to sleep. These walls held so many memories. I felt like if I looked hard enough I would see her laying where the bed had been, and then my mind telling me not to cry. As I stood in the doorway, a chill went up my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck, and my arms started to raise, and I could feel something closing in on me, in my ear. I felt a warm breath and heard one loud run. I ran out of the house so fast, not even locking the door. As we were driving off, my granddaughter asked me who that was standing in the window upstairs.